I've talked here before about confidence, about what it takes to become confident, how to maintain that confidence, what takes away from our confidence. But here I want to talk about several traits of highly confident people that I learned about a little while ago and then started practicing and implementing into my own life and really noticed how much that changed my relationship with myself and how I felt about myself, and ultimately helped me feel more confident in who I was. And so I want to share them with you because there's some good ones. There's some less common ones that I think many of us are talking about or learning about. And so I hope that they help you as you implement them the way that they have helped me and been helping the people that I have been teaching them to. If you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second and introduce yourself in the comment section below. If you're back again, it is always good to have you. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. The button's about right down there. Then you get notifications when new videos come out. Either way, my name is Kristina, and I'm a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and the creator of my incredible membership community, the Shift Society. And I know I have many shifters here, so a special hello to you shifters. You can find out more about the Shift Society in the description below. I help heart-centered humans break through the crap that is holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And these simple little traits or habits that I didn't even realize that I was doing, that they were holding me back, that they were kind of preventing me from liking myself and feeling confident in myself in the ways that I could have been. And then when I started just working on them, being more mindful of them, really noticed things shift even more. So let's jump right into these. The first trait of highly confident people is that they know they don't need to be right. When I heard this one, it kind of socked me right in the gut. But when you think about it, why do you need to be right? Thinking about the arguments that you have, the kind of spats that you have, even the back and forth with strangers on the internet, that you're trying to be right. You're trying to make sure that everyone sees things the way that you do and that no one can argue with you. You're trying to prove your point the ways that we kind of criticize or judge people that don't agree with us or that don't see things our way, and how we kind of like get on this mountain and we're like, I need to die on this mountain of being right. But do you? Is it necessary? Is it helpful? Is it really getting you where you really want to be going? Now, I'm not talking about believing in a cause or standing up for social justice issues because you want to make the world a better place, because you want to make the world a more equal and equitable and responsible place. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about kind of little arguments, perspectives on things that don't actually matter that much, but you kind of put your stake in the ground. You're like, I need to be right and I need everyone to agree with me and see things my way and I need to convince them. But why? And for me, realizing this, that there were arguments that didn't need to be had, that winning did not need to be accomplished. And when I was able to just kind of take a step back and leave things that didn't need to be addressed or faced or like taken on, it kind of gave me this sense of empowerment where I was like, oh yeah, I can choose whether or not I want to engage with this. And I don't have to, because I don't need to be right, or at least I don't need other people to think that I'm right. Kind of goes with that funny saying, I would agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong. I'm joking, sort of. But really just being like, you know what? You're allowed to see it that way. I'm allowed to see it this way. And I'm going to be okay with that. The next trait of highly confident people is that they share their ideas, right? They're open with their ideas and they're not afraid to talk about their own ideas or perspectives or beliefs about stuff, but they don't get too precious about them. And they don't get offended when other people don't see things the same way that they do. So it's like they have ideas, but they're also willing to let other people have different ideas. Now, it doesn't mean that they have to agree with everything that somebody else thinks, right? Somebody else's perspective, but they're not going to just like argue it to the death, right? Because again, they don't need to be right. Now they can have conversations about it, but it's not the same as like, I need to prove that I'm right. It's more like, I want to share my perspective. I want to hear your perspective. And I want to hopefully share a few things with you that might give you a different understanding. But at the end of the day, I'm not here to force you to think differently. Right? And the same way that they're not afraid to share their opinions because they're not worried about other people disagreeing with them, because they're like, you know what? That's okay. Maybe I could learn something from you. Which brings us to the next one of highly confident people. The next trait is that they're open to learning from others because they're not so precious about their own ideas, unless it's like things that are really important to them, where they're like, you know what, this is a no negotiation topic. Like I don't have any wiggle room on this one. So really not open to having a, you know, to having a different perspective on this, but with other things, right? With other things that they're like, you know what, I can learn something. I don't know everything. I could learn something, and they're willing to be open to other people's ideas and perspectives. And they don't take cheap shots at them for having different ideas. They seek to understand. Now, this can be a really hard one, especially when there's people who have views and ideas that you really disagree with. But understanding that those people came to those conclusions based on their own experience, information, and understanding. So it came from somewhere, even if it's not necessarily something that you think holds water or is valid or it's kind of out there, but still understanding that that person came to that idea from some experience that they had. And so being willing to listen and try to understand. And continuing with this same theme of arguing or needing to be right, is that highly confident people are intentional and mindful about where they spend their energy. They're mindful about which conversations they want to engage in. They are intentional about which arguments they want to invest themselves in. They are deliberate with how they respond to comments that are made, to conversations that are being had, and they decide whether or not they want to invest their own emotional energy into that thing. And sometimes they're like, you know what? I'm not going to engage with that. I'm not going to respond to that. I'm not going to reply to that. I'm not going to indulge that because it's just not where I want to spend my energy. And there is a difference between avoiding a challenging conversation or a challenging situation because we're like, oh, I'm afraid and I don't want to deal with this and I'm just like going to hold myself back because I'm afraid, versus intentional non-engagement. Where it's like, you know what, I am intentionally choosing not to engage with this, not to let that comment that that person made, let it trigger me and then get all worked up about it, right? And make a whole thing about it. I'm just going to intentionally not engage because it's not my circus. It's not my monkeys. It's not what I want to get involved in. And I'm going to save and reserve my energy, my mental and emotional energy, for the things that I believe are going somewhere helpful, that are going to be useful or productive. And getting pulled into this argument or reacting to this trigger or, you know, engaging with this person in this way, it's not going to be helpful. It's not how I want to spend my time and my energy. And they know that about themselves and they're mindful. It doesn't mean they're perfect at it all the time, but there is an awareness and a mindfulness around it to be like, you know what, I'm in charge of my thoughts and emotions and where I spend those, what I do with those. The next trait of highly confident people is they believe in themselves to achieve their goals and they don't get taken out by challenge or adversity. So they have just like a certain belief. If there's something that's important to them, they're like, yep, I can do this. I can make this happen. I'm not going to say that it's going to be easy or seamless. I'm not going to face any challenges. I'm not going to get knocked down. But I know that on the journey, no matter how bumpy it is, I know that I will be able to get back up. I know that I will be able to face those challenges. I believe in my resilience and my resourcefulness and my competencies and my intelligence, that I can figure this out. So they just have a belief that they can do things. They can accomplish things. They can achieve things without the delusion of grandeur that it's going to go perfectly and they're going to be the best. They just have a belief in their own perseverance and persistence. Not sort of this idea that everything's going to be perfect, but that no matter what, they have the resources to get up and keep going. That they're not going to let a disappointment or a bruised ego talk them out of getting back up and continuing going. Confident people just know that they're like, you know what? It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. I'm going to come up against some stuff, but I can do it. I can figure it out. I'm scrappy. The next trait of highly confident people is that they celebrate their successes. They don't just blow past them or say to themselves, well, it should have been like this, or it could have been like this, or it would have been better if it had been like this, right? They don't discount their successes. They celebrate them and they recognize themselves, and they are able to acknowledge their efforts and say, you know what, this was hard and I persevered and I'm so proud of myself. I'm so proud that I didn't give up. I'm so proud that even when things got tough, I kept going and I believed in myself enough to know that I could. And I was willing to let myself be challenged and let myself kind of grow into the next level of myself that was going to be able to achieve this or accomplish this or have this or create this or whatever that is. That they're able to celebrate themselves, not just with the big things, but along the way for the effort, for the resourcefulness and the resilience like we talked about. Being able to say, like, good for me. That was hard and it hurt or it was challenging, but I did it, right? My ego got a little bruised along the way because I didn't quite get the result that I wanted at this point, but I persevered and I did it. I did this part of it. I got to here. And that took guts, that took courage, that took strength. And I'm going to recognize, I'm going to celebrate myself for that, not just for the outcome, but how I needed to grow and what I needed to overcome, and my ability to keep showing up, my determination to keep showing up even when it was hard, and I'm going to celebrate me for that. Further to being able to celebrate themselves, confident people are also able to celebrate others. They are able to celebrate their outcomes, their results, their successes, their journeys, because they don't see someone else's success or someone else's journey as a threat to their own. They know that there is plenty to go around. And if someone else is able to be successful at something they want, then they don't see that as taking away from their ability to be successful at it or to get those results. They see it as an indication that it's possible, which makes it more likely for them to be able to have that too. Confident people are able to lift up others because they know that a rising tide floats all boats. They don't feel threatened by other people's successes. And I know that this can be a hard one. I struggled with this one for longer than I'm comfortable admitting. But feeling jealous, right? It's normal to feel jealous when somebody has something that you want, but only if you believe that you can't have it too. Only if you use that as a reason to not feel good about yourself, to be like, oh, well, they have it, well, I'm not good enough for that. Instead of being like, no. They can have it. It means that it's possible. They're a person. I'm a person. They worked hard to get it, obviously, because that's just how most things work. And if I'm willing to do what they were willing to do, chances are I'm going to get a similar result. And so saving that energy, resenting someone for having something you want and being able to celebrate that and knowing how good that feels when you're able to celebrate someone else and be truly happy for them. Because it also means that you're happy for yourself because you know that that's possible because they did it. So you can too. If that's what you want, right? It's only if that's what you want, but usually we're not really jealous of people that have things that we don't want. So being able to celebrate others and making this an intentional practice. And another trait of highly confident people is that they practice a sense of belonging everywhere they go. And I say practice because a sense of belonging is a practice. It's not something that comes naturally to the majority of human beings. And even if you've been doing this work for a long time, it's still not something that just shows up consistently in every situation, that we have to practice our sense of belonging. We have to be reminding ourselves of who we are, and allowing ourselves to be who we are, no matter where we go, reminding ourselves that who we are is good enough, that I don't need to please or perfect or perform in order to gain approval. I don't need to try to fit in. I don't need to try to be who others expect me to be in order to get them to like me, because that's not authentic and that won't build a real connection. So I'm going to practice my sense of belonging, which means that I have to accept myself for who I am. I have to practice radical acceptance of who I am now. Even though I'm not perfect, even though there's things that I want to do differently and areas that I want to grow in, I'm still good enough as a human being. And I accept myself as a human being for who I am and what I am now. One of my favorite quotes is a paraphrase of Maya Angelou's quote that says, "True belonging is knowing that you belong everywhere and nowhere, all at the same time." When we belong to who we are, when we belong to ourselves, no matter where we go, we belong, because we always have ourselves with us. So building that relationship with ourselves and reminding ourselves of who we are, that we don't need to be anyone or anything else to be worthy of love and belonging. Practicing that wherever we go, we will always belong. The next trait of highly confident people is they don't believe their self-rejecting thoughts. Now, I have yet to meet a human being who never has a self-rejecting thought like, you're a loser, you're a failure, you're not good enough, you're not worthy enough, you're unlovable, you're not competent enough, you're not capable enough. I've never met a human being who has never had those thoughts, and no matter how much they've been working on building their relationship with themselves, that they still, never have those thoughts. They do come up for all of us, right? It's part of having a human brain that likes to kind of throw us trash every once in a while, or even lots of a whiles, lots and lots throughout the day. But confident people don't believe it. They're like, hey brain, I see what you're doing. I'm not going to buy into it. I'm not going to indulge it. I'm not going to just take this and sort of like ruminate on it and obsess about it and like make it into a thing. I'm just not believing it. You can toss me whatever you want, but I'm just going to toss it back. Not believing that today. And so being confident doesn't mean that you never have self-defeating thoughts, that you never have self-rejecting or self-critical thoughts. It just means that you get better at not believing them. Another trait of highly confident people is that they say no when they want or need to, and yes when they mean it. That's part of that authenticity, is that they allow themselves to just say no without feeling guilt about it, when it's like something that is not okay with them, that they really don't want, right? They don't live under this sort of sense of like debilitating obligation and guilt. It doesn't mean that they just run around and say no to everything that's like, that doesn't work for me. No, right? Doesn't mean that confident people are never willing to inconvenience themselves or kind of take one for the team or show up for someone, even if it's not their, favorite thing to do or their first priority, but they don't do it out of this sort of sense of guilt or like debilitating obligation. They do it out of choice to say, you know what? This may not be my favorite thing to do, but I want to invest in the relationship in this way. I want to contribute in this way. This is important to me because I want the result that comes from this, right? I want the building of that relationship, or I want the growth of that organization or that cause or whatever that is. And I'm going to contribute in this way because the outcome is important to me. But they're not doing it out of, I'll be a bad person, or everyone's going to think that I'm terrible or selfish if I don't. They don't deal with that trash. They don't deal with that trash of like, everyone's going to think all this stuff about me if I don't do what they want me to do. They're like, no, Other people don't define how I feel about me. I define how I feel about me, and I make decisions based on the things that are important to me and the outcomes that I want, which again doesn't mean that I always do things that are like, I feel like doing or that I really want to do. I don't actually maybe want to do this thing, but I want the result that comes from it. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to make that conscious choice to do it. But then if they're like, you know what? I need to not do this right now. I need to take this time for myself, or I want to be focusing my energy in this direction or with these people, or this is important to me, so I need to say no to this. Then they allow themselves to do that. They are intentional and mindful about their no, and don't, get caught up in all kinds of guilt and feeling crappy when they say it. They just allow themselves to say no, and they're mindful, intentional with that. But then they also allow themselves to say yes only when they mean it. Right? And yes, when you mean it, again, doesn't mean that you're only saying yes when it's something that's like great for you, but it's because you like the reasons for doing it. You're like, yes, I want to do this because I want to, be generous with this person, or I want to show up for this person, or I want to invest in the relationship this way, or I want to contribute to this cause, or whatever that is. I want to contribute in this way, not necessarily because I feel like it, or that's exactly how I want to spend my time, but I want the result that comes from that. So they don't do yeses out of guilt or obligation, and then they don't build up a bunch of resentment about it. It's like, oh, this person's making me do this. No, they're not. No, they're not making you do it. You are making you do it because you don't want to feel guilty, because you've told yourself that if you say no, that there's something wrong with that and you're going to feel guilty, right? So we don't want to feel guilty when we're like, this person is making me do it. They are not. You are, because you don't want to feel guilty. So making a conscious choice to say yes when you need it, yes when you mean it, and no when you need it. Speaking of saying no, I know it can be a tough one, especially for those of you who really struggle with saying no. You don't know how to say it in a more kind of gentle but clear way. I have a list of 25 ways to say no. It's free. It's a download. You can get it in the description below. It's going to walk you through 25 different ways to say no that are clear, but also kind. So for those of you who tend to be more sensitive and empathic people who just, really struggle with saying no and how to do it in a clear but kind way, that guide is going to be for you. And it's free, and you can get it by clicking the link in the description. Highly confident people. It's not something that just happens. More often than not, it's something that is built intentionally by making choices every day, by choosing how we think, and thereby how we feel, and thereby how we show up every day. Really looking at what is contributing to that and what is taking away from that. And if becoming more confident is something that you want, doing more of the things that are contributing to it and doing fewer of the things that are taking away from it. Funny how that works, but funny how we often don't do something so simple as that. Let me know your thoughts. Would love to hear what connected with you from this. Get that free 25 ways to say no. Always good to have you here. And until next time, take good care.